Hey guys, welcome to Geek Freak. Today I'm going to be ranking all 41 movies that I saw last year, 2025, from worst to best. I'm going to split these up by how many stars I gave it out of 5. There's going to be pretty major spoilers here, so if you haven't seen all the movies, I'll leave a list in the description. I'd recommend checking them out, but if you don't care, that's fine as well. Alright, let's start with the 1-star movies. In last place, I have Dangerous Animals. This was a movie released by Shudder on June 6, 2025. It's pretty much carried by the idea that all the kills are shark kills, but unfortunately it doesn't get very creative with that. When Ella Newton's Heather gets killed, I thought it was pretty cool, but then every other time the killer, Tucker, played by Jai Courtney, tries to kill another person, he does it the same way, so it got a little boring. Another positive I have is that the main characters here, Hassie Harrison Zephyr and Josh Houston's Moses, are very likable. Basic, yeah, but still likable and easy to root for. The writing in this movie, pretty freaking basic, not creative really at all. It was very easy to tell who would live and who would die, which takes any sense of thrill and suspense away from the movie. But if you want a pretty basic horror movie, this might be a good first horror movie to watch. But there's a lot better introduction to horror out there. Next up I have Snow White. It's a live-action remake that was released March 21st, 2025. I'm going to be honest, the only reason this isn't last place is because it's a musical, and I have a soft spot for musicals. That being said, it is still a very unenjoyable movie. Like, being a musical can only help so much. I think Rachel Zegler as Snow White and then Andrew Burnett as Jonathan were like the best parts of the movie, and that's not saying much because Gal Gadot as the evil queen was really hard to watch. The only part of the movie that I really enjoyed was the Hi Ho song, and just the Seven Dwarves in general were fun to watch. This next thing is not really a criticism; it's just like kind of like the whole third act. I was waiting for the queen to turn into a giant dragon. But when that never happened, I realized that I've never actually seen Snow White, the original. I was thinking Sleeping Beauty the whole time, but that's my bad. Anyway, I only have 2 1-star movies. Moving on to the 1.5-star movies, I have Fear Street Prom Queen, which was released on Netflix on May 23rd, 2025. I think this movie gets close to the "it's so bad it's good" threshold. Like, there's seriously a dance-off at the end of Act 2, and it was very hard to watch. I don't think the things they were doing even qualify as dancing, really. It was just a lot of, wiggling and moving. It was not good. Other than that, there are a couple of cool deaths in the movie. The standouts were Ella Rubin's character, Melissa, where she just accepts it after getting cornered by the second killer, and Dakota Taylor's character, Bobby, who gets his hand cut off by a paper cutter. It was really funny when he goes to try to open the door with like no hands. Another downside was the ending reveals, because it was so obvious that the Falconers, Nancy and Dan, were evil people. The only slightly surprising part was Tiffany Falconer, played by Fina Straza, also being evil, which made sense, but I was kind of hoping that she would have a change of heart in the end, but she didn't. She was horrible to India Fowler's Laurie Granger the whole movie, and it would have been good character work if she came around at the end, but she didn't. They went the easy route here and just made her a killer, but it's whatever. Alright, and then next up I have another movie starring Ella Rubin. It's Until Dawn, which came out on April 25th, 2025. Her character in this movie is Clover, and she is joined by Belmont Kamali, pretty sure I'm saying that right, as Abe, Odessa Azion as Nina, Ji Young Yu as Megan, and Michael Cimino as Max. Now, I think this movie had a great concept with like the Groundhog Day but horror thing. Unfortunately, while it was a good concept, the way they did it made it feel like there were no consequences to the movie, because none of the main cast died for real. Sure, they die a bunch throughout the movie because it's like a Groundhog Day thing, but like they're stuck in a loop, so they make it out at the end. That being said, there are some of the deaths in the loop that I think were really cool. The one where they blow up was epic. The one where Megan gets possessed was pretty fun. And the first one where they're attacked by the same killer from the game was fun to see as well. Another nitpick I have is that they teased like a huge monster in the fog, but they never used it for a kill, and they never even really show it. They just like show the silhouette. So that sucked. And then my final thought is that it felt like a really forced connection to the game when they had Peter Stormare's character in the same room that his character was in the game. And also, it was really weird to name this movie after the game at all, because the only thing it shares with the game is the world and like the Wendigos. That being said, I think the Wendigos in the game were like a lot better. All right, moving on to the 2-star movies. I got a Minecraft movie next. This one came out May 2nd, 2025. This movie was kind of hard to rate for me because I really enjoyed watching it, but like I could sense this like it's not a good movie, you know. The movie theater experience with this one was like something special. I was really lucky to be able to see it in a theater that didn't get the cops called on them, so that was nice. But my theater landed like in the perfect middle ground, like excitement, but not the cops, you know. The story of this movie was again pretty basic, but the upside with this movie is that you can feel all the actors' excitement through the screen, so it helps like get the vibe up. Jack Black as Steve and Jason Momoa as Garrett absolutely like steal the show here, and the chemistry on screen is like palpable. The downside is the other characters: Henry, played by Sebastian Hansen, Natalie, played by Emma Myers, and Dawn, played by Danielle Brooks, are like very forgettable and don't really get anything memorable to do. Where the movie loses me a little bit is with the lack of stakes. Same with Until Dawn. Like Garrett sacrifices himself just to come back in the final fight with Rachel House's Malgosha. It felt pretty cheap, but I get it. It's a kids movie, and if I had seen this as a kid, it probably would have been like my favorite movie of all time. So it's fine. Next, I have Happy Gilmore 2, which came out on Netflix on July 25th, 2025. I grew up on Adam Sandler movies because my dad loves them. So I've seen the original Happy Gilmore like 5 times in my life, and I loved it. You know, the sequel, though, was kind of underwhelming. It was like 30 minutes too long, and most of the jokes don't really hit. I think a good comedy is like really funny and has a good heart behind it, and this movie had really neither of those. There was some funny bits throughout the movie. My fave was Happy having alcohol just hidden everywhere. That was really fun. Another one was when it shows how Happy's wife died. It's just he just nailed her in the head with a golf ball. It was so like comedic that it was so surprising when like she was actually dead. One of the things I didn't like was Happy's sons. They were all so annoying, and his daughter Vienna, played by Adam Sandler's own daughter, Sunny Sandler, was slightly better, but still not very entertaining. And the whole like maxi golf thing was just so dumb, you know. All right, next up I got the 2.5-star movies, starting with Megan 2.0. This came to theaters on June 27th, 2025. Now my little brother, who's 10, has no taste, said that this was his favorite movie of the year. Now, while everyone's allowed to have their own opinion, this one's wrong. So if you think Megan 2.0 is the best movie of the year, you're wrong. I thought it was a fun movie, but like the best, no way. It had some good humor, some good action, but like the most part was just kind of bland. The best part was definitely Katie, played by Violet McGraw, and her relationship with Gemma, played by Allison Williams, and Megan, played by Amy Donald, and voiced by Jenna Davis, was the only part that was actually somewhat compelling about the movie. I think the weakest part was the quote-unquote twist reveal that Christian, played by Aristotle Athari, was like the bad guy behind everything, behind Amelia, who was played by Ivana Sakno. I think it was a very obvious reveal. It didn't really have any emotional impact because the movie didn't make me care about this guy. or his relationship with Gemma. Anyway, next up I have the only Christmas movie that I ended up watching this year. It's called Oh What Fun. Came out December 3rd, 2025. I thought this was a pretty paint by the numbers Christmas movie, and was really good at getting me like the holiday spirit. I watched this one Christmas Eve. It was a nice carryover into Christmas Day. Um, I love the family relationships in this one, specifically the rivalry between Jason Schwartzman's Doug and his sister-in-law Taylor, played by Chloe Grace Moretz. And of course, I enjoyed the main plot line, which was Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Claire, getting pretty pissed off, rightfully so, that her whole family forgot about her when they went to a trip that she planned. So she decides to drive all the way to LA to try to get on her favorite show. It's called Zazie Timms. It was nice to see how the movie addresses how overlooked mothers tend to be on Christmas, but it also shows that Claire is being a little selfish for not wanting her daughter, Channing, played by Felicity Jones, to start her own family traditions with her husband and kids. So I like that dichotomy there. And then next up, I have the Naked Gun reboot. Excuse me. This one came out on August 1st. Okay, I'm going to take that again. Okay, next up I have the Naked Gun reboot, which was released on August 1st, 2025. It's a really funny movie, but doesn't really have any heart behind it. That's why it's so low. I don't really have anything to say about it, because it would just be me explaining the jokes I found funny, and it's not going to be funnier for me than when it was in the movie. But it's a funny movie, so you should check it out if you like comedy. Next up, I got Captain America Brave New World. It was released February 14th, 2025, on Valentine's Day. I think Anthony... oh my god. I'm going to take that one again, too. Next up, I have Captain America Brave New World. It was released February 14th, 2025. I think Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Captain America, is fantastic. I really wished the Falcon and the Winter Soldier was turned into his first movie, because that would have been so much better of an introduction in the movie world. One second. For the audience of people who haven't seen the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, oh fuck. Okay, I'm just gonna start over again. Okay, next up I have Captain America Brave New World. This came out February 14th, 2025, on Valentine's Day. I think Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson's Captain America is really good. I wish they made the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show his first movie, because it would have been a great introduction to his character arc, and for the people who don't have Disney Plus, it would have been such a better introduction to him as Captain America. It also suffers a lot with all the returning characters from the Incredible Hulk. It doesn't really feel like a Captain America movie. It feels like they subbed the Hulk in. They subbed Captain America in for the Hulk. It has Thaddeus Ross, Harrison Ford, Samuel Stearns, Tim Blake Nelson, and Betty Ross, Liv Tyler. Also, Red Hulk in this movie was such a letdown, you know? I mean, the scenes he was in were really good, but they were all shown in the trailer, so there's no surprise element. Another negative I have is that all the action scenes in this movie felt really choppy and hard to follow. They would cut the camera to a different angle after every hit, so you couldn't really follow the action. The only good action scenes were the aerial fights on Celestial Island with Sam and Daniel Ramirez, who played Joaquin Torres' Falcon. The fight in the junkyard with Sam and Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito. And the fight with Sam and Red Hulk was also pretty good. Also, the ending speech that Sam gives Red Hulk to talk him down is so obviously on green screen, it takes you out of the movie. But I did enjoy the leader as a villain, masterminding everything. I thought it was pretty interesting. He had good motivations, and I really liked the design, just his brain growing out of his head. But what really brought this movie down for me was the post-credit scene. It's just so laughable. Sam talks to Alita on the raft, and it's just so unnecessary, just the tease. Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think Marvel thinks they have to have a post-credit scene in every movie, and this was the first one where it felt super forced for me. Alright, next up I have Jurassic World Rebirth, which was released on July 2nd, 2025. To be real, oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna take that again. Alright, next up I got Jurassic World Rebirth, which was released July 2nd, 2025. Let's be real, it's a dinosaur movie. Of course it was fun. But before we get into the positive, I'll start with some negative things. Some of the dialogue in the first half was super cheesy. Like the scene where Zora Bennett, played by Scarlett Johansson, and Duncan Kincaid, played by Mahershala Ali, when they were telling each other their backstory, it was so poorly written, it took me out of the movie. It felt like it was like, just, hey, what's your backstory? Like, oh, really, here's mine. You know, it was like, really bad. Another negative is that it was like very easy to tell who would die and who wouldn't. Even though it was easy to tell who would die, those deaths were still pretty epic. Like Bobby and Nina getting killed by the Spinosaurs was really cool. But my favorite kill was when Leclerc was climbing up the mountain, and then it just cuts to Quetzalcoatlus reaching to the top of the mountain, and Leclerc is just hanging out of his mouth. I don't really have any thoughts on the family. They did their job in the story. Nothing else to say about them. A big negative I have is that the D-Rex didn't really feel threatening because it kind of only killed extras and like one main human villain. It was Martin Krebs, played by Rupert's friend. So I think Kincaid definitely should have died at the end, because it would have made the D-Rex feel threatening, because it just took out a major character, you know what I mean? I think the best action scene was when they go after the Mosasaur's DNA. It was really good at building and releasing tension throughout the sequence. But my favorite part of the movie was Henry Loomis, played by Jonathan Bailey. I loved his speech about how humans are killing themselves, and the scene with the Titanosaurs really made me feel the shock and awe that he was feeling. It perfectly captured the scale of the dinosaurs, and it made me a little emotional in the theater. It was like really beautiful. Alright, next up I have Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which came out December 5th, 2025. This movie did what a movie should do, and it led with its best foot forward with an incredible opening scene. We follow Charlotte, played by Okay, I'll take that again. My voice is getting dry. Alright, next up I have Five Nights at Freddy's 2, which came out on December 5th, 2025. This movie did what any movie should do, and it led with its best foot forward. It had an incredible opening scene where you follow Charlotte, played by Audrey Lynn Marie, as she sees William Afton, played by Matthew Lillard, take a kid to the back rooms of Freddy's, and like she tries to get all the adults' attention, but per usual, they're pretty useless. So she decides to save the boy herself and ends up succeeding, but dies in the process and falls into the puppet's hands. It was just like such a good opening, you know? Unfortunately, the rest of the movie doesn't really compare to the opening, like at all. The only saving grace for the rest of the movie is the puppet and how terrifying it was when she possessed McKenna Grace's character Lisa and Abby, played by Piper Rubio. The makeup and the VFX on like the puppet's possessions were so good and like so creepy. Probably the worst part though was the end, where the animatronics from the first movie pull an on your left moment and just too easily tear apart all the toy animatronics. The last thing I'll mention here, because I saw a lot of people online talking about it, saying how Mike, Josh Hutcherson's character, and Vanessa, played by Elizabeth Lail, should have stayed together at the end. Like, but I don't think Mike's reaction was like unwarranted. It was like such a valid reaction, because like she chose them. That doesn't mean that he's obligated to choose her. You know what I mean? It's like her like keeping the secrets is what led to Abby almost dying. So like, it's a valid ass reaction. All right. Let's go to the first animated movie I have on this list. It's Predator, Killer of Killers. which was released on Hulu on June 6, 2025. This was such an inventive Predator movie with like the anthology angle was really fun. I think my favorite segment was the first one that focused on Lindsay Levanchi's Ursa going after Zoran. This was such a brutal segment. It was really I didn't know this going into it, but it was really cool when I realized that Anders was played by Damien Hawes from Smosh, because I love Smosh. But the second segment which follows Kenji, played by Louis Ozawa Shangshin, trying to get revenge on his brother for betraying him when they were kids. This segment being completely silent, except for like the opening and closing dialogue, was such a cool idea. I also loved how it focuses on both ninjas and samurai, like two aspects of Japanese culture that are really cool. The third segment took place in World War II. Follows Torres, played by Rick Gonzalez, trying to prove himself as a pilot. This is probably my least favorite segment, mostly because most of Torres' lines were like super cheesy and a little cringy to watch. And then the final segment has all three of the main characters being forced to team up to fight against a champion of the Yautja in a gladiator-style pit. In the fight, Kenji and Torres are able to steal a ship and get away, while Ursa is still stuck on the Yautja's planet after sacrificing herself, so the other two could get away. My favorite part of the movie is the reveal that the Yautja keep every person that has defeated one of them in cryosleep so they can wake him up to participate in these gladiator fights. Overall, as my first Predator movie, it was really fun to watch. Next up, this is probably going to be a little controversial, but I have Weapons next up. This came out August 8th, 2025. Probably going to get a lot of flack for this, like I just said, but I didn't really like it, you know what I mean? I also didn't really like Barbarian, which is Zach Cregger's previous horror movie. So his method of storytelling may just not be for me. But back to Weapons. There were some parts that I did enjoy, like the section following Marcus, who was played by Benedict Wong. I ended up really liking Marcus's character, so watching him get turned into one of the titular weapons and forced to brutally kill his husband hurt, you know? Which is part of what makes a good horror movie, you know, you should hurt sometimes. Another thing I liked was the reveal that Gladys, played by Amy Madigan, was a witch that was feeding off of the 17 kids' life force. That's implied. I don't think they straight out say that, but it's heavily implied. Speaking of the missing kids, one of the things I didn't like about the movie was when the kids ran out of the houses in the opening. Like in the marketing, the scene was so scary. They like either used no sound or like creepy music, but in the movie they put this soft rock behind it, which like really throws it off for me. And like my main problem with the movie as a whole actually is like it didn't feel like very tonally consistent. There's like a lot of humorous moments, which are usually like humor in horror movies usually like break tension. But in my opinion, this movie had more than like twice as many of these tension breaking moments than it had tension building moments. You know what I mean? Right now, I can only think of like 4 tension building moments. The 2 dream sequences, the moment when Julia Gardner's Justin was asleep in her car, and the finale when Justin and Josh Brolin's character Archer were confronting Gladys. It was like the only like tension building moments that I can recall. My final criticism is the ending where the 17 kids chase down Gladys. It was like the moment being played for laughs didn't feel satisfying. But I'll stop complaining about Weapons there, and I'll move on to The Conjuring: Last Rites. This one was released September 5th, 2025. As a horror movie, this was pretty mid. But I think this movie really shines as a goodbye to Ed and Lorraine Warren, played iconically by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, respectively. It does suffer from feeling like 2 different movies at points. Up until the Warrens show up at the Smurl house at the beginning of Act 3, it's just like very back and forth like. Another aspect I love is the relationship between Judy Warren, played by Mia Tomlinson, and Tony Spera, played by Ben Hardy. I think Tony had a pretty interesting backstory with his history as a police officer who almost died at gunpoint. That was pretty compelling. The ending was also pretty intense, with the mirror just charging at the Warrens and Tony. It is kind of funny that they got absolutely wrecked by a mirror, but I don't think it was too silly. Didn't really take away from it that much. Alright, next we got the 3-star movies, starting with Eddington. This was released July 18th, 2025. Now, I was loving this movie for like the first hour and a half, with the rivalry between the current mayor, Ted, played by Pedro Pascal, and the current sheriff and wannabe mayor, Joe, played by Joaquin Phoenix. Unfortunately, the movie lost me in the last half hour when they just have some random guys come in to kill a deputy named Guy, played by Luke Grimes, and then permanently disabled Joaquin Phoenix, Joe. I don't like it when a movie introduces random characters to get rid of the villain of the movie. It just doesn't feel earned, you know? But what I did like about the ending was Brian, played by Cameron Mann. It was really funny to see him go from liberal to conservative based on what will get him more fame. And it's funny because there are people like that that just say whatever to appeal to the largest audience. Cheers. It's alcohol, hard alcohol in there. No, it's just water. Alright, next we got Honey Don't. It was released August 22nd, 2025. This is a comedy crime movie. Features Margaret Qualley as Honey O'Donoghue, investigating some deaths connected to a church run by Chris Evans' character, Reverend Drew Devlin. Try saying that 5 times fast. And she enlists some help from Aubrey Plaza's character, M.G. Falcone, to give her information from the police department that they have on the deaths. I thought this was like a really good comedy because it had the good humor, good heart. I loved all the characters except for M.G., but I'll get into that in a minute when I talk about the ending of the movie. I also love that it takes place in the present day, but it still feels like a spoof of like a 50s detective noir film. My only complaint, it's a pretty big one, the ending, like I just said, the twist that MG is the person killing all these women, it felt so forced. Like, not at all teased, not led up to, not earned. It was like, her motivation for killing the women was because she thinks they act like victims. She saw that as weak. You know, it's good that the movie portrays that belief as bad, because it is a bad belief. But, like, it wasn't built up to, like I said, so it just didn't feel earned. It just felt like the writers needed a twist, so they chose that one. I'll end this review on a positive note. I love how Reverend Drew got killed by Cher, played by Lyra Abova, right after having sex with her. It was a very satisfying way to get rid of such a horrible person. Good character, horrible person. Next up, I have Thunderbolts, aka The New Avengers. This came out May 2nd, 2025. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't really excited for this movie. In fact, it was like the first Marvel movie that I was watching to like keep up with Marvel. Like, I didn't really want to watch it. But like, I couldn't have been more wrong in my expectations. It was so good. It was like one of the best Marvel movies in a while. The characters were so good in this movie. The standouts were definitely Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova and Wyatt Russell as John Walker. I love the arc that John has. He went from washed up Captain America to finding a team that he could call his own, which is like really fun to see. He probably considers himself the leader, but we know he's not. It's definitely Yelena and Bucky, played by Sebastian Stan, who are leading this team. I also loved how Yelena's arc from feeling alone and depressed to finding something to fight for and live for. A downside for the movie is that Bucky and Ghost, played by Hannah John Kamen, don't really have a lot to do. After the scene where they escape the compound, Ghost kind of fades to the background of the movie, and Bucky feels a little underused throughout the movie as well. I also love Alexei here. David Harbour plays the concerned dad role really well. The choice to have the final fight be the main characters convincing Bob not to fight the Void was like really powerful. I love that message. Made me love the movie. And the post-credit scene here does the exact opposite of what the one in Captain America Brave New World did. It actually made me want to see Doomsday. Like, I was going to see it anyway, but like Captain America Brave New World, if I was like not a fan of Marvel, would not have made me want to see that movie. But this one would have made me want to see that movie. Yeah, next up I have Heart Eyes, which came out February 7th, 2025. Sorry. I haven't watched I'm just going to start over. Man, who knew talking so much really dries out your vocal cords? Holy shit. Okay. Next up on my list, I have Heart Eyes, which came out February 7th, 2025. I haven't watched a romance movie since I was a kid. Not because, like, toxic masculinity, I swear. I get secondhand cringe really bad from, like, most rom-coms. But this was, like, a good rom-com, like, on horror, because it's also horror. But I digress. The chemistry between Olivia Holt playing Allie and Mason Gooding's Jay was, like, it was so fun. It was so easy to root for them. The kills in this movie are also really fun. My favorite was definitely the opening kill, where Adeline Garrett, played by Lauren O'Hara, is chased by the killer and crushed in a wine press. It was so scary. It was so good. The killer turns out to be Jordana Brewster's character, Janine Shaw, and her husband David, played by Yosan An. The motivation was a little silly, but it was okay. It didn't need to be great, and it wasn't great. They were killing couples because it turned them on, as you do, and they would have sex after killing them. Anyway, we're going to move on to the 3.5-star movies. Starting with Companion. This came out January 31st, 2025. The acting in this movie was so good. The standout is obviously Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher, who did such a good job playing her fear after realizing that she's a robot. I also love how we can see the toxic relationship between human and Lovebot, with Iris and Josh, played by Jack Quaid, and the healthy-ish relationship between human and Lovebot, with Patrick, played by Lucas Gage, and Eli, played by Harvey Guillén. Another positive I have was how pissed I was when Josh erased Patrick's memories of Eli so that Josh could use him to catch Iris. Sorry. I have a couple of nitpicks with this one. First, I wish they hadn't spoiled the fact that Iris kills Josh, or the fact that Iris is a Lovebot. It was just kind of like, I wish, like, the opening monologue, it ends with, so, like, I killed him. I wish, like, cut that part off and just had it at the end when they replay that monologue. But that's just a nitpick. I also like the scenes that Kat, played by Megan Suri, had. I think she was a good audience surrogate who was weirded out by her friends having Lovebots. And the ending, when Iris does kill Josh, was, like, very cathartic. It's very satisfying. Alright, next up I have How to Train Your Dragon. It just came out June 13th, 2025. So I never saw the original How to Train Your Dragon, so this was like my first experience with that story. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really heartfelt story about becoming your own person, even if it goes against what everyone in your life wants you to be. I loved Mason Thames in this one. He just became the first actor since Jim Carrey to get 3 movies open up #1 in the box office in 1 year, with How to Train Your Dragon, Black Phone 2, and Regretting You, so props to him. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I love Mason Thames' portrayal of Hiccup and his chemistry with Astrid, played by Nico Parker. It was really fun. And the CGI on Toothless and the rest of the dragons was really good. They like really looked lifelike. Another highlight was watching Gerald Butler's stoic learn to love his son for who he is, and even start to agree with his son that dragons can be friends of the Vikings. The final fight was really fun to watch. It's always a bonus. Next up, I got Predator Badlands. This came out November 7th, 2025. This was such an inventive way to make a Predator movie. I feel like I just said that for the last one, but I'm going to say it for this one too. Choosing to focus on a member of the Yautja with Deck, played by Demetrius Schuster, was so cool. It's such a good idea, and I really started to root for Deck, which I didn't think was going to happen. It was really cool also to see Elle Fanning play twin androids, Thea and Tessa, with like such distinct personalities. It was really impressive. Although it does lose some points, because it starts to feel very like Disney Channel coded toward the end with like the animal sidekick and the "It's my mom" ending. But overall, it was a good movie. Just realized how many more I have left for 3.5 stars. It's gonna take a while. I'm almost out of water. Alright. Next up, we have Wicked for Good. This one came out November 21st, 2025. Now, I'm going to be honest here. I expected this movie to be great, or at least as good as the first one, but it really fell flat for me. A few of my big complaints are how it felt that Glinda, Ariana Grande's character, really regressed at the start of the movie. Like, she went through the same character arc and development that she already went through in the first movie. It's like, it felt like she just did the same thing again, you know what I mean? And it was just so easy to hate Glinda in this. Like, every single choice she makes is so selfish, which she already learned from in the first movie. She learned not to do that in the first one, but then she keeps doing it in this one. When Glinda and Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo, fight over Fiyero, played by Jonathan Bailey, it was so stupid. You know what I mean? It was like, it was so cringy to watch. I thought we left women fighting over men like in the 2010s, but we have it here in 2025, which is crazy. I don't really have any other negatives for Elphaba and Fiyero. It's really just Glinda that I have a problem with here, including how she gets to rule Oz by the end of it, and she gets the ability to read the Grimoire. Like, it didn't feel like she really earned any of that. Like, she was just given it. You know what I mean? I also wish they had cast someone else as Madame Morrible, not because of racism, because Michelle Yeoh just can't sing. You know what I mean? It's like she was like very flat. Anyway, where was I? Alright, and then Jeff Goldblum, played by the Wizard. The fact that it was so easy for Glinda to get him to leave was like a little annoying. But I do have some positives for this movie. For the music, I really enjoyed the music. Even the new songs. I didn't even know there were new songs until after I saw the movie, but The Girl in the Bubble and No Place Like Home was like, I really liked those. I feel like they were good ads. But the standout was definitely No Good Deed, obviously. I also really like the body horror of the Tin Man transformation that Ethan Slater's Bach goes through. And the final note I have is that I really respect the decision to sideline Dorothy and not really show her throughout the movie, since her story arc really isn't important to the arcs of Glinda and Elphaba. So I respect the decision not to really focus on her. Next up, I have another Mason Thames movie, The Black Phone 2. This came out October 17th, 2025. I had a similar problem with this as I did with Until Dawn. It's like, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a serial killer, but I'm upset that no one died. You know what I mean? I mean, some people died, but like, they were all past victims of Ethan Hawke's grabber. What upset me was that none of the present day cast died. And it's like, when they arrive at Camp Alpine, I thought to myself, like, so these are all the people that are gonna die, all the characters that just like, what are their names? I forget the main characters' names, but anyway, when like all the characters from Camp Alpine come up to Finney and his sister, I forget her name. It's just like it's so. I'm gonna start this one over. Next up, I got another Mason Thames movie. This is The Black Phone 2, which came out on October 17th, 2025. I had a similar problem with this one as I did Until Dawn, and like, okay, I don't really know how to say this without sounding like a murderer, but I wish people died. It's like, I hate that no one died, you know what I mean? Because like, people died, but like, they were all past victims of the grabber, Ethan Hawke. So it's like, no one present day died. Like, when they arrived at Camp Alpine and all the characters came out to introduce themselves to Finney and the crew, it's like, oh, so these are the guys that are all going to die in this movie. But then none of them died. It's whatever. Demian Bichir's... I can't have pronounced that right. Beechers? It's whatever. His character, Mando, almost died. And so did Barbara and Kenneth, played by Maeve Betty and Graham Abbey, respectively. In Mando's case, he was saved last second, which was okay with him because like surviving because I liked him as a character. But Barbara and Kenneth, when they were getting attacked by the grabber, he just moved on without finishing the job for no reason. I also think that the grabber here was like nowhere near as threatening as he was in the first movie. After the scene where he's throwing Gwen around the kitchen, he never felt like he had the upper hand. Like he was never threatening after that. Speaking of Gwen, my only other issue was Madeline McGraw, who plays Gwen. I don't know what happened because I loved her in the first movie, but I don't think she was like doing good acting for the most of this one. You know what I mean? It's like she felt so like flat and monotone throughout most of this movie. But like when like emotions were high in those scenes, she was doing really good. But for the most part, it was all monotone. Like the moment when she confronts Finney for turning into their dad at the end, and also when she gets the call from their mom, those are like really good scenes from her. But for the rest of the movie, she was like very flat. Although I do have a lot of negatives about Black Phone 2, there's a lot that I did like, such as the reveal that Mom Hope, played by Anna Lore, didn't off herself, but was killed by the grabber because she found out who and where he was. I also loved the relationship between Gwen and Ernesto, played by Miguel Mora. It was really cool to see Miguel again, playing Robin's younger brother. It was also really cool to see their dad, played by Jeremy Davis, working on himself. I still hate him for how he acted in the first movie, being an abusive parent. He's a jerk, you know what I mean? But like, it was nice to see him sober up and stop beating his kids. So with all this, along with the negatives, this is why I have Black Phone 2 close to the middle of the list here. Next up, I have Good Fortune. This came to theaters October 17th, 2025. This comedy, it has good humor, good heart, and a good ending. It's a perfect comedy in my opinion. This movie's premise of switching the lives of regular guy Arj, played by Aziz Ansari, who also directed the movie, and rich guy Jeff, played by Seth Rogen, it was a really good idea. The movie shows that despite the popular saying, money can solve a lot of your problems. It also does a good job showing how tedious and painful doing food delivery can be. I wouldn't know. But hands down, the best part of the movie is Keanu Reeves playing the angel Gabriel. He is so funny in this role, and like after he gets turned into a human, watching him realize how hard it is just to make a living and how it's no longer enough for most people to just work one job. That was really fun. I also love how Jeff understands and forgives Arj for not wanting his old life back, and all three of them move into the mansion that used to be Jeff's. That was a really fun part of it. I kind of wish they ended it there, but I also really like the ending they did go with, of Arj going back to his old life and figuring out things with Keke Palmer's character Elena. That was really sweet. And Jeff starting to use his powerful and privileged position to do some good was also really nice. 1, 2. I have 3 more. Okay. 3 more before I get more water. Okay. Next up, I got Together, which was released July 30th, 2025. I think this was a great movie about codependency and how when you're in a relationship, you can end up becoming one person and not really having your own identity. The scenes with Dave Franco's Tim was stalking his fiancée, Alison Brie's Millie, were so creepy and so well crafted to just make the audience feel uncomfortable. This whole movie does a good job at making the audience uncomfortable. Like, oof. Everything doing with the merging of like the bodies looks so good. It's like, and by good I mean absolutely disgusting, but like that's what they were going for. It was really convincing. Like if I didn't know that 2 people merging was impossible, I might have believed it was actually happening. I didn't love the ending though, where Tim and Millie just accept that they're gonna merge and go through with it. It makes it seem like the movie is pro codependency. But anyways, let's move on to Mickey 17. This one came out March 7th, 2025. This was another really fun movie. I liked how in this world, as soon as humanity found a way past death, they stopped treating it with any fear or respect. I also think it had a good opinion on capitalism and how evil it can get. Robert Pattinson did a really good job of playing 2 versions of Mickey. Really, the whole cast was putting their best foot forward. But my favorite part was the ending, where humans learn to live in tandem with the creepers after Mickey 18 sacrifices himself to kill Mark Ruffalo's character, Kenneth, the evil billionaire. I also really love the relationship between Mickey and Nasha, played by Naomi Aki. It was also really funny how Nasha wanted to just have a throuple with the 2 Mickeys. You know, that's valid. You know, if I had 2 Robert Pattinsons, I'd want a throuple too, you know? Can you blame a guy? Alright, next up is Death of a Unicorn. This was released March 28th, 2025. I never thought I'd see a unicorn as the villain, quote unquote, of a horror movie, but who knew they could be so scary, like, and violent. The kills were the standout of this movie for sure. I didn't think they could get so inventive with like just horn kills, but they did. My personal favorite kill was Dr. Basha, played by Sunita Mani. It was epic to see her get ripped in half by unicorns. It was really cool. The standouts of this movie were Jenna Ortega's Ridley, Paul Rudd as Elliot, and Will Poulter as Shepard. With Paul and Will's comedic timing and Jenna being able to hold the emotional weight of the movie, it was like they all knocked it out of the park with this one. I did find the fact that the unicorns could show you the afterlife really cool, and the stylized version of the afterlife that they show was like really beautiful. Probably my favorite part though was when Richard E. Grant as Odell and Tia Leones as Belinda, along with Elliot and Shepard, were trying to sell the unicorn horn dust to a bunch of billionaires. It was also really funny when Shepard starts doing lines of unicorn dust. It was really funny. Alright, on to some absolute bangers. We have the 4-star movies, starting with Kpop Demon Hunters. This one came to Netflix on June 20th, 2025. While I obviously love this movie, I do think it was a little bit overhyped. Some of the negatives I have were the lack of character development with Mira, who was played by Mei Hong, and Zoe, who was played by Ji Young Yu. They felt very stagnant. And when they were confronted with the fact that their best friend Rumi, played by Arden Cho, was part demon, you think they might rethink their view of demons, but they just decide to accept Rumi, but they still think the rest of the demons are evil. That's really my main problem with the movie overall. It feels like it's headed to an ending where the girls learn to not assume all demons are evil, but then it ends with them just banishing them all and not really learning the lesson of diversity the movie feels like it was trying to convey. But the music is really good, so there is that. Next up, I have Zootopia 2, which came out November 26, 2025. This one takes everything I liked about Kpop Demon Hunters, like the themes of friendship, and adds on by actually making the message of diversity and also adding messages of immigration and gentrification as well. It was really cool to see the movie keep Judy, played by Jennifer Goodwin, and Nick, played by Jason Bateman, as just best friends. Because a lesser movie would have made them kiss after the scene where they confide in each other. But this movie lets it be them healing their friendship instead of starting a relationship, which I thought was really mature of them. I also really enjoyed Gary, played by Ke Huy Quan, and his mission to find the proof that his family created the weather walls, not the Linksleys. But my least favorite part was the twist, quote unquote, that Parbert Linksley, played by Andy Samberg, was actually on his family side and not the reptile side. I do also think that Nibbles, played by Fortune Feimester, should have died during Parbert's evil turn, but I get it, it's a kids movie. Alright, next up I have Final Destination Bloodlines, which came out on May 16th, 2025. This was an insane comeback for the Final Destination franchise. I've never felt such anxiety watching a movie before. Even the original Final Destination movies, they made me feel... I'm going to take that one back. 1 second. Next up I have Final Destination Bloodlines, which came out May 16th, 2025. This was an insane comeback for the Final Destination franchise. I've never felt such anxiety watching a movie before. Even the original Final Destination movies never made me feel as anxious as this one did. The kills were so good too. The highlights obviously being Eric, played by Richard Harmon, and Bobby, played by Owen Joyner. Their death scene was so insane. I don't really have a lot to say about this one, but it was really cool to experience in theaters. Next up, I have the two biggest comic book movies of the year, Superman and the Fantastic Four First Steps. Now, it was really hard to decide which of these I liked more, but one of them had to be below the other, and so I ended up putting Superman below Fantastic Four. Superman was released on July 11th, 2025. This film was so beautifully shot, and it was really cool to see James Gunn show that he can do a movie that's not as ensemble as the ones he's done in the past. Sure, there are a lot of characters in this movie still, but they all serve a purpose in the story of Superman, played by David Cornsweet, and Lois, played by Rachel Brosnahan. Speaking of David Cornsweet, he did an incredible job as the Man of Steel. He truly embodied what Superman stands for, and Nicholas Hoult did just as good of a job embodying what Lex Luthor stands for, that being a hater. I also really enjoyed the side plot with Skylar Gisando's Jimmy Olsen and Sarah Sempio's Eve Tessmacher. That was really fun. But my favorite part was definitely Mr. Terrific, played by Eddie Gathegi. And that dope scene he had taking out the army that Lex has. That was really cool. The thing that held this one back was definitely the scene in the pocket dimension where Superman and Anthony Kerrigan as Metamorpho are trying to save baby Joey and get sucked through a proton river and into a black hole. I can suspend my disbelief, just not that much, you know what I mean? But next, obviously, I have The Fantastic Four First Steps, which came out July 25th, 2025. The reason I have this above Superman is because the relationship between the four was so endearing and sweet. I like how they don't spend too much time introducing the Fantastic Four, since we've seen that story so many times. My favorite part was when they visit Galactus, played by Ralph Ineson, and he sends Sue Storm, played by Vanessa Kirby, into labor, and the rest of the family, Evan Moss Bachrach as Ben Grimm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, have to get her back to the ship and help her through her delivery while being chased by the Silver Surfer, played by Julia Gardner, through hyperspace before tricking her into a black hole. That was definitely the coolest part of the movie. I also love the final fight with Galactus. It felt like the stakes were up, and the only way to get him through the portal was for Sue and the Silver Surfer to sacrifice themselves. Although Reed and Sue's kid Franklin does bring Sue back. But my biggest issue with this movie is that all it took for the four to get the people of Earth on their side was for Sue to give a lackluster speech to a group of a couple hundred people. Like, humanity is not that kind, you know? Like, I guarantee you that if that happened in our real world, someone would have snatched that baby. Maybe even me. I don't know. But next up, we are moving on to our 4.5-star movies. Starting with Frankenstein, which came to Netflix on October 17th, 2025. I've never read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but I've always been interested in the idea of like that story, and I think this movie did that idea so well. Oscar Isaac does an incredible job as Victor Frankenstein, and Jacob Elordi did an equally good job as the creature. This whole movie has a good perspective on life and death, and how if you take away death, life loses all meaning. I also really loved the way they break out the movie into the prologue, Victor's tale, and the creature's tale. I did think the ending, where the creature just forgives Victor seemingly out of nowhere, was a little weak. But I like to think of it as the creature not really forgiving him, but just wanting to give his creator a moment of peace before he died. Like, the creature already won. Like, they knew they won. So, like, why rub it in, you know? Next up, I have Bugonia. This one came to theaters October 31st, 2025 on Halloween. This movie only really has 3 main characters. Emma Stone as Michelle, Jesse Plemons as Teddy, and Aidan Delbris as Dawn. This movie was like really good at convincing you that there was an equal chance that Michelle was an alien or not. And the trip it takes you on, where you're flip-flopping throughout the whole movie, was really fun. I also like how scary they made Teddy, to the point where like you don't care if Michelle is an alien or not. You just feel bad for her having been captured by this insane person. I also like how even after Michelle admits to being an alien, you start thinking that she's lying to get away from these crazy people. I did think it was kind of out of nowhere when Don killed himself, but I do like how it led to Teddy's unraveling to the point where he believes Michelle when she tells him that the antifreeze in the back of her car is a cure to his mom's terminal illness, and he ends up killing his mom with that. I also love the reveal that the aliens created humanity after accidentally killing the dinosaurs. But humanity did what we're good at and started a nuclear war to the point where only cavemen were left. The ending was also really grim, with the aliens deciding that humanity was too far gone to save, so they killed the whole race. And the last 5 minutes of the movie is just shots of people having died doing everyday things. Alright, this is my final 4.5-star movie. It's Shelby Oaks. This came to theaters October 24th, 2025. I am a little biased toward this one since I saw it alone in a huge theater, so the terror was really ramped up for me. But it was still so good. It was really just a horror movie through and through, and it does a great job at being scary. The first act was entirely in this documentary style, mixing in some found footage. The second act was more found footage, but had some present-day investigating mixed in. And then the third act is Camille Sullivan's Mia going to Shelby Oaks to find her sister Riley, played by Sarah Dern. I think having the twist being that the demon was going after Mia this whole time and just using Riley to get to her was great. And the movie ending with Riley getting eaten by hellhounds was like a bold choice that really paid off for me. Alright, let's get into my top 5 movies of 2025. These are all 5 stars. Alright, one of these did have to be last, obviously. Worst of the best. So at number 5, I have One Battle After Another. This released to September 26, 2025. This movie is so fun. Even though the main plot is a white supremacist, Steven, played by Sean Penn, trying to kill his mixed daughter, Willa, played by Chase Infinity, so he can get into a white supremacist club called the Christmas Adventurers Club. It was still fun, you know? Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays Bob, really brings the comedy into this movie. While he's trying to get to his daughter, Willa, he just keeps running into problem after problem. from getting arrested to forgetting the password for the French 75. I'm going to be fully honest, my biggest problem with this movie is the title, One Battle After Another. It just isn't snappy, you know? And I know it's the most extreme form of nitpicky, but it really bothers me. I think a better title would have been like The French 75 or The Christmas Adventurers Club. Like, just name it off one of the groups in the movie, you know? Alright. Some water. Alright, moving on to number 4, I have Wake Up Dead Man, which is the newest movie in the Knives Out world. This was released November 26th, 2025. After I saw this movie, I put it at number 2, but upon rewatching it, I think it fits at number 4 the best. I love how this movie talks about the Catholic Church. It points out all the horrible things the Catholic Church. I'm going to redo that one. Moving on to number 4, I have Wake Up Dead Man, which is the newest movie in the Knives Out world, and was released on November 26th, 2025. After I saw this movie, I put it at number 2, but upon rewatching it a couple times, I think number 4 is a better fit. I love how this movie talks about the Catholic Church, points out all the horrible things the Catholic Church is used to defend, but also points out the good parts of faith and how it can truly help people. My favorite aspect is how it points out how the church treats women. Kaylee Spaney's Simone is taken advantage of and used for her money. Kerry Washington's Vera is guilted into taking care of a kid that isn't hers. Annie Hamilton's Grace is trapped in a cycle of judgment and shame. And even Glenn Close's Martha is expected to take care of everything at the church, while Monsignor Wicks, played by Josh Brolin, gets all the credit. My favorite aspect of this movie, though, is how Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig, is given character development. In the other Knives Out movies, as well as most detective movies, the detective doesn't go through character development. They just help lead to character development in other characters. But here they actually give Benoit that development, with him learning to put aside his love of the checkmate moment so that Martha can have the dignity of turning herself in and explaining her own crimes. I also love Josh O'Connor as Father Judd. He was truly the star of the show, and his journey from wanting to find out who's framing him to putting that aside and just trying to be a good priest. It was really fun to watch. I also love the touch that he renamed the church from Our Lady of Perpetual Fortitude to Our Lady of Perpetual Grace. It was really nice of him. Alright, now we get into the top 3 movies of 2025, in my opinion, which is the correct one. Starting with Sinners, which was released April 18th, 2025. This was such a great movie, and it sat at number 1 for about 6 months. And I think if it's number 1 on your list, it's perfectly valid. I love how the first half of the movie focuses on the Smokestack twins, played by Michael B. Jordan, and their cousin Sammy, played by Miles Canton, trying to open up a joint by black people for black people. I think the star side characters, at least for me, were Wunmi Musaku's Annie and Delroy Lindo's Delta Slim. They both added so much to the movie, especially Annie, who was the person who informed everyone on how vampires work. I also love how the villain Rimmick, played by Jack O'Connell, had some depth to him, having likely been a victim of religious persecution in Ireland. The best part was definitely the ending, where Smoke takes out some white supremacists before passing on to be with Annie and their kid. The post-credit scene also adds so much with the final lines that Sammy and Stack share being just beautiful. Alright, moving on to number 2, I have The Life of Chuck. This was released June 13th, 2025. This was below Sinners for a while, up until I rewatched it recently, and I bumped it up to number 2. I realized how much it affected me. This movie does such a good job showing the magical parts of life while also showing the very grim parts. In the third act, thanks Chuck, we follow Marty, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, as the world is slowly dying. The fact that everyone has reached the point of reluctant acceptance and that the world is going to end soon was so grim. And I think the scene where Matthew Lillard's Gus puts it best, where he says that even though the whole world is ending, all anyone can say is that sucks. That's probably like the most impactful part of the movie for me. I also like how everyone is leaving their partners to chase the one that got away, since they don't know how much time they have left. Even Marty takes a long walk to be with his ex-wife Felicia, played by Karen Gillan. In the second act, Buskers Forever, we finally meet Chuck, played by Tom Hiddleston, as he decides to dance for busker Taylor, played by Taylor Gordon, and Janice, played by Annalise Basso, joins him after she went through a breakup. This act is what brought the movie down for me, because I think the dancing goes on for like a few minutes too long personally. But anyway, the first act, called I Contain Multitudes, we follow Chuck as a young kid played by Benjamin Pagic as he loses his parents and lives with his grandparents Albie and Sarah Krantz, played by Mark Hamill and Mia Sara respectively. Yeah. I love watching Chuck learn to express himself through dance and gain the courage to dance with his crush. I also like how they had Albie advise Chuck to pursue a job in math since it was a safe option, and he ended up listening even though he loved dancing. It's true to life that our parents have a lot of sway, subconsciously at least, in the decisions we make even as adults. My big issue with this movie is that there was something supernatural in the coop. I just wish they had just kept it grounded like the rest of the movie was. Anyway, my number one movie from 2025, drumroll please. It was The Long Walk. This one came out September 12th, 2025. Man, I've never felt this way after watching the movie. It was so good. The sense of dread and just depression was insane. I think this is a movie that everyone should watch at least once. It is so good. It was also the first time I've ever cried during a movie. I've teared up at other movies before, but I fully sobbed during Olsen's death, played by Bing Wang. It was just such a good scene. And this movie also captured what effects war has on young boys so well. At first, they're all excited to go to war to protect their country, but as soon as they witness their first death, reality sets in. And when their friends die, they just have to keep on walking. The relationship between David Johnson's Peter and Cooper Hoffman's Garrity was really incredible. Watching the movie, you know only one of them will live, but it still hurts every time a main character dies. Especially when they all just start accepting their death, like when Tut Nuwad's art just turns around and takes it. The ending was also amazing with the juxtaposition of the crowd singing proudly while Peter's just sobbing over Garrity's death. And he decides to throw away his plan to help the future so he can kill the Major, played by Mark Hamill, to get revenge for Garrity. I personally think Pete dies there, but it's left to interpretation, so however you think it ended is technically right. Alright, now that I've gone through all my movies here, I want to go through the top movie for each genre. The genres I chose here are action, comedy, drama, horror, romance, sci-fi, thriller, musical, mystery, crime, animation, comic book, adventure, fantasy, and western. There's only one from a couple of these categories, so it's like an automatic win, but it's whatever. And if a movie is of multiple genres, I'll just put it in whatever genre I think it fits in the most. So for action, we have Sinners as the best movie. For comedy, I put Good Fortune as the best movie. For drama, I put One Battle After Another. For horror, I put Shelby Oaks. For romance, I have Hard Eyes, because that was the only romance movie I saw this year. For sci-fi, I put Frankenstein. For thriller, obviously I put The Long Walk. For musical, I have Kpop Demon Hunters. For mystery, I have Wake Up Dead Man. For crime, I put Honey Don't. For animation, I have Zootopia 2. For comic book, I had the Fantastic Four First Steps. For adventure, I had Predator Badlands. For fantasy, I have The Life of Chuck. And for western, obviously, I have Eddington, since that was the only one I saw this year. Alright, that is going to be all for today. If you guys enjoyed this first video for my channel, please subscribe. That'd be a great help to me. And like and comment on the video. But anyway, that's all for today. See you guys next time. Bye.